Our first reading this morning is taken from the Old Testament, from one of the minor prophets, Habakkuk. And there are two parts to the reading. There's a part that is very human, that we can all identify with, when Habakkuk is on the verge of feeling sorry for himself. Oh Lord, I'm surrounded by misery, and you're not paying any attention to me. Oh Lord, why must I suffer like this? Why are you disappointing me? Why do I have to live in such misery? Verge of feeling sorry for himself. And we've all had days like that, haven't we? It's very human. But then the second part reflects his faith, because he's a prophet. He's a spiritual man. And one of the great things of being a spiritual person, especially being a person of prayer, one of the practical effects of that is that it gives us a sense of perspective. It gives us a sense of balance. It gives us a sense of a quiet serenity in spite of the problems and the issues and the disappointments we have to deal with in our life. And that's what Habakkuk comes to in the second part of the reading, because God says to him, don't give up. The dream is still coming. If it delays, wait for it, but it will come. It's not going to come in your time. It's going to come in God's time. And so these words of reassurance, of reaffirming of faith. In the gospel, Jesus builds on that. But he doesn't just talk about having a sense of perspective. He talks about having a realization of the power at work in us, who allow God to work in our lives. And he speaks of power. If you had faith the size of a mustard seed, the size of a grain of salt, you could move mountains. You could say to this sycamore, be uprooted and transplanted into the sea, and it would obey you. When I was in the seminary, one of our professors told us, you will never understand the power you have as priests. You'll never understand that. A baptized Christian, all of you, do not understand the power at work in your lives when you are united with Jesus Christ. The power of faith. You know, most of the time when God has used me in my priesthood, I haven't really been aware of it. And I think most of the time with all of us, we're not really aware of how God uses us. But every so often, it comes through with a blinding clarity. And I'm going to tell you a story of my first or second year as a priest. And this involved a woman who actually has a relative in this parish. Her nephew was at the last Mass. And her name was Bessie. Bessie came down with a terrible affliction that nobody could figure out. None of the doctors could put their finger on what was going on. But her body was breaking out into all sorts of terrible sores, and she was just miserable. And her husband, they were Hispanic, her husband was so desperate that he even took her to a Hopi medicine man. And the medicine man actually was able to deal with some of the symptoms for a time. But then they came back worse than ever. They finally got Bessie up to Flagstaff to a dermatologist who determined she had a very, very rare disease and a very terrible disease in which the body rejects its own skin as a foreign agent, and that caused the breakout in sores. The disease was nicknamed the Jewish disease because most known cases of it had occurred among Jewish people. And so the way you treated this disease was to lower the body's immunity, which is a rather dangerous thing to do. But it was the only way they could overcome the disease. Well, poor Bessie was in the hospital for months while they monitored her very carefully and slowly began to deal with this disease. And every Monday was my day off. I was stationed in Winslow where she lived. Every Monday I would be up in Flagstaff on my day off, and I would always stop at the hospital to see Bessie. The day finally came when her sons told me that they were going up that afternoon to pick up their mom, that they had finally released her and she was coming home and they could hardly wait. So the next day I went up to Flagstaff, and for the first time in months, I didn't bother going to the hospital because Bessie was home. So that particular day, all of my priest friends were tied up, were busy, so I was pretty much by myself. So I went out to eat, and then I thought, well, do I want to go back to Winslow this early? It's only 6:30 at night. Do I want to go back? No, it's my day off. I'm going to go see a movie. So I picked out a movie and went in, handed my ticket to the girl, and the girl says to me, "Are you Father O'Keefe from Winslow?" And the first thing I thought to myself was, thank God this isn't a dirty movie. They recognize me. So she says, "Did you go see my Aunt Bessie today?" And I said, "No." I said, "Bessie's home." "No," she said, "no. She had a temperature spike yesterday when they came to get her, and the doctor wanted to keep her an extra day." So I said, "Oh, really?" So I thought, well, maybe I'll just turn the ticket into you, and I'm going to go up and see Bessie. So I did. And I was wearing casual clothes, what we used to say in Rome, going alla borghese, when priests don't dress like priests, but they dress like ordinary people. So I went up to the hospital, and there was Bessie sitting up as big as life, holding court, happy as a clam, and she was talking with various people visiting her and everything like that. She was disappointed she didn't get to go home the day before with her kids, but she was going to go home tomorrow. Okay? So we're talking, and all of a sudden I blurted out, without even thinking about it, I said, "Bessie, would you like me to go and get the holy oils and communion for you and bring you communion?" And she says, "Yes, Father, that'd be nice." So I ran all around Flagstaff trying to get a clerical shirt so I'd look like a priest and get the Blessed Sacrament and get the oils. It took me about an hour. Go back up, and Bessie's sitting up, makes all the responses, I gave her communion. She was very, very happy, and we talked for a few minutes, and then I decided I needed to start back for Winslow. So in the little lobby by the nurse's station, I ran into somebody and we were talking. And all of a sudden, after what seemed like 2 minutes, one of the nurses goes running by crying. And she comes up to me and she says, "Bessie has just died." And I said, "What?" I said, "I was just in there 2 minutes ago." She said, "Father, she's dead." And it was like the good Lord slapped me across the face. I didn't know Bessie was that close to death. I didn't have to know. But why did I decide on a fluke to go to the movies? Why did I go to the movie where her niece was working? Why did I decide to turn in the ticket and go up and see her? Why did I offer to anoint her and bring her communion? I don't know. But I look back on it, God was using me every step of the way. And sometimes things like that happen to us. And God lets us know, I am very much a part of your life. I am very much in control. I am very much using you for the good of other people. And that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. That's the power we have where God is so close to us. And most of the time, we're too dumb to realize it, myself included. We're too dumb to realize it. But God can do great things in this world if we open ourselves to him and to his will. You know what the first responsibility we have as Christians? It's not to live good lives. That's important. It's not to say our prayers. That's important. It's not to receive the sacraments. That's important. But the very first responsibility we have, allow God to love us. Allow God to love you. And that's much easier said than done. Because instinctively, all of us feel we are not worthy of God's love. And that's absolutely true. We're not worthy of God's love. But he still loves us. That's the power. That's the power. And all we have to do is open wide the doors of our heart and allow Christ in, and allow Christ to do with us and use us for his plans and according to his will. St. Paul in the second reading today says to Timothy, stir up the flame I ignited in you when I imposed hands on you, when I ordained you. Stir it up, live it. And by the same token, he says the same thing to all of us. Stir up your faith. Don't sit there like bumps on a log. Don't think you have no importance in God's plans. Every single one of us is handcrafted by God, put in this world for a purpose. God does not make junk. He made you, and he made me, and he made us for a purpose. Do you remember those of us who are old enough? Remember your Baltimore Catechism? First question in the Baltimore Catechism. I learned it in the first grade. Who made you? Very good. God made you. Second question. Why did God make you? Very good. To know him, to love him, to serve him in this life, and to be happy with him forever in the next. And how do we serve God in this world? We serve God by serving our neighbor. And for most Christians, the closest neighbor you have is your spouse. A man is called to serve his wife. A wife is called to serve her husband. And together, they both work together to serve their children. We serve God by serving one another. And that's how the power of God can be at work in our lives. In my case, God used me as he used Mary. You know, I was going to the hospital with Bessie, simple act of kindness, simple act of friendship, simple act of support. And God used it to touch her in a very specific way at a crucial moment in her life, the moment she passed from this world to the next. And so the readings today are really, really empowering for all of us because they remind us of who we are. Got it? Good.